Worship is to know and love God. It's the heart of someone that says, I want to know this God that is revealed to us through Christ, and I want to love him. And that is worship. Everything we do flows from that desire to know him and love him.
Whether it's creating something for the kingdom or it's being in a context of people that don't know him, so that how we work is on display, how we work with excellence, we work with integrity, we treat our employees with grace and love. It's how we interact with people, it's our context, and so that is worship.
Worship, as much as it is songs and it is all of those forms of praise, it's so much more than that. We don't have to be at young adults sitting in the service, like wherever it is that you worship. Just got to go to Uganda, and for them, like in Uganda, there is a lot of dance and worship, and so for me that was huge because I love to dance. I teach dance. It's like part of who I am, and I truly feel like it's a way that God has given me a gift to relate to people better and break down language barriers or even things like that to just connect better with people.
Being a scientist, there's little ways you see God that you're like, oh, well, that's really cool, God. I didn't know you did that in our natural world. And then there's the big ways where you're like, how else could that have happened? How else can you explain that other than God did this? Those are my primary ways of worship because it's so big, so unimaginable, and so unexplainable that only God could have done it. And how wonderful that God did it and decided to show himself to us that way.
If you're in that medium of capturing art, a lot of times we take pictures of clouds and trees and kind of the landscape stuff because those things don't talk back to us. We don't have to deal with like the awkward interaction. With photography, I was able to tell a story that allowed me to share with people in foreign countries on mission trips and things like that and tell their story. And so it became a form of worship in as much as I was able to bring those stories back and share them with people here. So to be able to take a camera and bring back those images and tell their story, it became a powerful form of look at what God's doing in this part of the world, in this camp, in this country, in this school, in this orphanage, in this place. And I think that became kind of a common thread through photography for me.
I think I see God most clearly and worship God most for his creation when I'm hanging out with 2-year-olds with Down syndrome or with 14-year-olds on the autism spectrum, and I get to see that God is so much more complex and beautiful and sovereign and good than the thing that we pigeonhole him into be. And what we in our earthly minds see as beautiful or good, that God's so much bigger and more vast than that. And so I enter into worship quite often in those moments with him where I just go, look at what you've done in this baby with Down syndrome that the world may not see, but you see, and you created, and you knit her together in her mother's womb and you created her with a purpose.
Yes, it's singing. Yes, it's prayer. Yes, it's responding to God's word. Yes, it's working. Yes, it's caring for your friends and your family as you're compelled to do this for God. But at the same time, you still have to pay attention. You can do all these things out of just random motion. You can do these things as kind of a part of your schedule, but you got to take a step back and remember and pay attention to the fact that this is all for him.
Because there was a season of my life where I would say that I could worship God with dance, but it became more about how many tricks could I do, or how cool did other people think I was, or like, will this dance impress them? What if it doesn't? And that became my main focus, and I felt my heart go farther and farther from God, like in the sense of dance and worship. The two started to become very, very separate. I think one of the most humbling things for me has been realizing that it's never been about me. Dancing on stage has never been about me. Teaching has never been about me. It's been about what has God given me and how do I get to share this with other people today. And so I think that's taken a whole new perspective on how I worship, and it's redefined what worship means to me. I could teach 2 of the same classes, but the one that I'm worshiping through is the one that's going to mean more in the long run, and that's the one that really was meant to last, and that's the one where I leave feeling more satisfied. The kids leave feeling more loved, more seen, more cared about. They get a better representation of what God's heart is, and I leave with a better understanding of who God's created me to be through those moments. So I think it all goes back to where my heart is aligned, if my heart's aligned with God, and if my intentions are focused on God. Because there are times when I could verbally say, God, take this day. But unless I actually, actively, and continually give that to him, I just put his name over a day and then made it my own, which wasn't giving it to him at all.
But on a bad day, everything's running through my head. All of what I've done wrong that day, I didn't read my Bible that day, or how I felt the day previous, or just everything's going on in my head except for worship. What I need to do when I get home, what I need to do the next day at work, what I should try to do to get closer to God, when really all I need to do to get closer to God is leave all of my thoughts and all of the distractions at the foot of the cross. I like to take my glasses off. I'm very, very nearsighted. So the second I take my glasses off, I can't see. I can't see. I can't see the words on the screen. I can't see the band. I can't really even see the people around me. So in that moment, it's kind of symbolic of me, to me at least, of shedding that distraction. It's almost that moment, and I've thought about this a couple ways, it's that living by faith and not by sight. Because I can't see. I really can't. But I'm living by faith in that I know God's going to lead me into worship. And maybe that's what we all need to do sometimes is, yes, everybody's singing around you, there's lots of noise going on, but just hit your knees and pray. And just ask God, God, lead me into worship. God, bring me into worship. Because that in itself can be worship. Because you're surrendering your brokenness and your distraction to God and saying, God, just bring me into it.
I may not be in a place where I can emotionally engage, whether it's, like at church on a Sunday or YA on a Thursday. But that's never because the song that's being sung isn't one that I like, or, the person on stage is singing out of tune. It's never because of that. It's because something's off in my heart. Those are the times when I retreat. I even stop singing, and I just begin thanking Him for the things that I know to be true. So I thank Him for being a God that loves me, a God who changes me and transforms me into new life, a God who forgives me for my sin, a God who pursues me when I'm not pursuing Him. When I come face to face with His character once again, I'm compelled to worship, because who couldn't worship a God who is all of that?
God's constant, and so to be able to say, now's the time to worship no matter what. And as much as we can hear lyrics, we can hear worship, but then to actually subscribe and hold fast to that in the seasons where we really struggle, really are broken and feeling pain, because it's still human to cry and feel loss and feel the loss of a loved one or a relationship or a friend or whatever that might be. So I think to be able to worship well, even when we're hurting, is such a beautiful thing.
It's the moment when you go, your plans are so much bigger than I'll ever know and ever understand, and maybe even on this side will ever see, but you're still a big God. You're still a good God, and you're still on your throne. And so often in the hardest moments is when that's the most true.
There are times where that looks like reading my Bible when I don't feel like it. There are times when it means going to small group when I don't feel like it. And the community of people the Lord has brought me, thank you, Jesus, has really been such a motivation and an inspiration in times when I'm like, but I'm kind of tired. That I've shown up and not been ready to worship, but humbling yourself and acknowledging where you are, that God has brought you there, and no matter if you feel like it or not, the words you're saying should glorify His name, and so not making it just a song, but trying to actually focus and humble your heart and realize what it is that you're doing, because it's not just a cool song you turned on the radio. It's like you are worshiping the Lord your God that created you. So how will I actually take to heart the words that I'm saying? And I think that has changed my heart about how to worship on times when I don't feel like it. I will really truly sit and think about what it is that I'm singing.
It's not only talking to God and saying, God, this is who you are. I love you for who you are. I want to glorify you with all that I am. But it's also a witness to the people around us to be able to say, this is who my God is, and He changes me, He transforms me. There's power in declaring His glory. It changes who we are and it transforms us, but it's also contagious. It's attractive, it draws people in. But they aren't attracted just to the worship, they're attracted to the spirit of the worship, because they're attracted to the God that we're worshiping.
To just be able to tell people, I see you, and there's a God that sees you too, and that's worship. It really is, and it may not be praise in the singing a song with a guitar sense of the word, but it is worship. It's so limited to think of it only in one context.
I'm a living sacrifice for God. and everything I do is unto Him.
Our lives are living sacrifices, and if you really think about that, as we live, we are sacrificing to God.
It's kind of a surrender moment, I think.
Everything I do, I see it as every day I'm being set apart as an object for His worship.